Okay, so I want to do a quick video here. I'm kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit, so been working on modifying this Series 1 cockpit I got from Gene Buckle for our local Civil Air Patrol squadron, and I promised him a video of when we were completely done modifying it, which I am definitely going to do, and I'm going to do a full review of the cockpit at that point. But really, really a great cockpit, and I really can't wait to just kind of do the overall video. But what I wanted to do right now is there's some modifications I'm having to make, and I realized I have everything mocked up, and before everything gets painted, because it's going to get painted black, and they're going to kind of make it maybe a little hard to see. And especially with the cockpit fully put back together again, might be harder to kind of show off what I had to do here. So I figured I'd make a video now to kind of show it off. So I want to start by kind of explaining real quick. Uh, so Gene Buckle made this particular cockpit, the Series 1 cockpit. Was gracious enough donated it to our Civil Air Patrol squadron so that we could use it. In the Civil Air Patrol, we have access. The National Headquarters Civil Air Patrol has these STEM education kits. Our squadron received a STEM kit for a flight simulator, which is a set of rudder pedals, a yoke, and a license key for Prepare 3D. So I just say that to say these modifications I'm making to the cockpit right now are very, very specific for what we're going to use it for and specific for the stuff that I have to use. That is to say, if I were building this cockpit for myself, I'd probably, be doing a joystick mount somewhere, a throttle mount on the side. Things would be much different than what I'm doing right here. So the reason I'm having to do everything that I'm having to do is because I have a very particular, I was given these items and these are what I have to use. Same with, I can point out the monitor there probably wouldn't be my first choice of monitor up front. Except this one was, again, gifted to us for free. So I'm not going to turn my nose up at free. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for the price. So that being said, again, I wanted to just kind of point out, so one of the things we want to use this thing for is obviously aerospace education for our cadets, but also recruiting. With that, things are kind of taken apart right now, but again, you'll see it all in the later video. But what I want to point out is, when everything's put together and the seats in there, again, this cockpit's more set up for like a joystick. I mean, it's a fighter cockpit, basically. So it's not really set up for a yoke. It's really tight, and I realized with the yoke mounted up where it needed to be, it was going to be almost impossible for an adult to get in and out of the thing. Cadet, maybe, young kid, but it was going to be really tough for an adult to get in and out. And so what I realized I had to do is, in some way, shape, or form, I had to make it so that the yoke could move out of the way to allow people getting in and out. What I settled on after a lot of playing around and trying a few different things is a swing arm setup. So you can kind of see on the side there, I've got some hinges. And that whole platform there is where the yoke mounts up. So I've got a couple of holes there you can see. So on the original, on the CH yoke, let me grab. So this is the yoke we use. And you can see those big holes on the bottom. So the way this yoke is set up to be used is there's two big clamps, and it's made to like clamp onto a table. So I just took those clamps off. Those same bolts that hold the clamps on go right through those holes, and so this thing is literally bolted right down. It's actually very nice and sturdy. So anyway, so the yoke bolts down here, and then this whole thing will just kind of swing up out of the way, and you can see there the door stopper, which was I guess actually it's a good point to point out another thing about this design is the design methodology, I would say, for this whole process is what I'd call a Tilla design. That is, things I had lying around. Everything that I used to put this thing together was literally scraps and bits and pieces that I just had here. So that's the other piece of it is, if I were building this, I shouldn't say building it for myself. I think it's going to be nice and sturdy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not cheaping out, but it just wasn't something that I was going to go out and spend a lot of money on. It needs to work, but let's face it, it's going to be used by a bunch of, 12 to 18-year-old kids, and it's going to probably see some abuse. and as such, I'm not going to sink a ton of money into it. So, and of course, things can get approved. That's the other kind of piece of this puzzle is I'm trying to finish this thing up here very shortly for a big open house we're having. So I'm kind of, I don't want to say in a rush, but I've got enough other projects going on in home where, we're doing some remodeling on our house and that sort of thing. I'm not going to stick a ton of time into this thing. So anyway, so got a couple of hinges there. And then, so the whole thing is kind of mounted up on that side. And then I've got a rest on this side to support it. And then you can see here, and this was the last thing I was working on, I've kind of got a notch out on this board. And it's just kind of got a peg there to help secure it front and back. So yeah, it seems to work pretty well. I've just got everything clamped down right now. It'll all get screwed into place later once once I'm probably done taking this video, I'll take everything apart and paint it and then actually mount it up into place where it's going to go. So yeah, so this is kind of what I had to do to get this CH yoke mounted up and set up for this cockpit. But in the end, and I've tried it out myself with the seat in place and the yoke in place, and yeah, pulling this thing up out of the way gives me, the leg room I need to lift my legs up and my knees up. And I'm 6'4", so I'm not a small person, but I think that, even though it doesn't seem like much, just the ability to be able to raise my knees through that hole just makes the difference in physically being able to get in and out of this cockpit. I'd love to mount the yoke even farther forward, but again, with that monitor there, it's mounted just far enough so that even at full forward travel on the yoke, the yoke center post is not going to hit that monitor. And I left a little bit of clearance too, because one of the things that I may do down the line as we continue to improve this thing is I might put a faux cockpit panel in front of the monitor, kind of hide the monitor there a little bit and just have what we want showing. But anyway, yeah, so that is the progress as of right now. And like I said, really looking forward to doing a full review of the whole cockpit once everything is done, hopefully in less than a week or so.